Tonight and tomorrow is the birthday of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. She passed away in 1988, and yes, as we've learned and as we've discussed in other contexts, birthdays continue every single year, not just because she's a Rebbetzin, a great spiritual, illustrious woman. For all people that pass, we continue with their, of course, celebrating the yahrzeit, the day of passing, marking that, and marking birthdays. So she was named after her very illustrious grandmother, the daughter of the second Lubavitcher Rebbe and the wife of the third. And that Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the original one, was an advocate. She was a strong voice. In those days, the issue that she would defend and champion was a concept called agunos, or an aguna. An aguna is a woman whose husband has disappeared or is refusing to give her a Jewish divorce. And in the time of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka and her husband, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, that was a very prevalent problem. There was a lot of economic stresses, a lot of different pressures, and men just sometimes ran away or disappeared. It's not a problem that originated then, and it, of course, in a sense, can last till today, during wars or other things. So this issue of the aguna, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the original one, the daughter of second and wife of third Rebbe, championed and spoke in a very strong voice. And similarly, our Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka also possessed a strong voice, a clear vision. When in Russia, so this is in the 1920s, and she was in her early 20s then, and she was officially authorized by her father, by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, to act on his behalf. So that's very interesting, because here this is the 1920s, okay? And if he's appointing someone as his official voice, someone who has officially the powers to sign in his name, to do things in his name, you'd think he'd say his wife or elderly Hasidic, scholar or a man. He picked a woman. He picked his daughter. He picked not his first daughter, his second. She was the one who was officially authorized to act on his behalf, and she did much for the Chabad underground. In those years, and of course the underground continued until the fall of communism. But in those years, this is, very, very intense persecution of any religion, and of course especially Judaism. And there was a very strong and persecuted underground, and she was very involved in a very practical way in helping them. The Lubavitcher Rebbe trusted her so much, saw in her such power and strength, that when he was exiled to Kostroma, where he was supposed to be for 3 years, in essence he was there for not a little over a week, but he was supposed to be there for 3 years, and he was allowed to take one family member with, and he selected her. From all of his family, he selected this, his second daughter, as the one that he knew would be of greatest benefit to him there. That wasn't really what I wanted to focus on, sort of a little background to understand her. She was a synergy of holiness and beauty. Meaning, what I mean by that is, she was a very, very, very holy, righteous woman, what we call a tzadekes. Lubavitcher Rebbe said about her, she has the powers to bless. It means you're a very, very holy, godly person if you can give blessings and they come true. Her blessings were very powerful. This happened actually not so long before she passed away. She was with her driver. She generally was as out of the limelight as one could be, very much a recluse, so to speak. In her house, she didn't want the attention, she didn't want the fame, she didn't want people to be looking at her and talking about her and giving her all this honor. She shied away from any extra honor or respect because of her position, so she wasn't really seen. But people knew what her car was. So once she was with her car, they were driving on the main street in Crown Heights, Kingston, and they stopped in front of the bakery, and the person driving ran in to get something. So she's sitting in the car. And generally when she was there, people sort of maybe looked but didn't look because they knew she didn't like it. So on a porch, not far, perfect view of the Rebbetzin in the car, were 2 women. They were drawing. They were outside drawing. And the woman who, this was her apartment, she ran inside. She's like, she didn't feel it was appropriate. She should be sitting there gawking at the Rebbetzin. And the other woman who was with her and drawing stayed on the porch. And she was looking at the Rebetzin's car the whole time. And after the car drove off, the original woman, meaning the owner of the apartment, comes out to her friend and like sort of like what was going on. And her friend was childless. She'd been childless for 10 years. And she said the whole time I was looking, like trying to see the Rebbetzin in the car. And mentally, in my mind, I was asking for a blessing for a child. And shortly after this woman, who was childless for 10 years, became pregnant, and she had a healthy baby. Actually, about, I could figure this out, 2 months after the Rebbetzin passed away. So the baby was born actually after the Rebbetzin passed away. I'm sorry, 3 months after the Rebbetzin passed away. About 3 months after the Rebbetzin passed away, this baby was born from this blessing that she received. She didn't say a word. She's on a balcony porch. The Rebetzin's in a car. But the connection was made. The blessing was received. And she had her baby. That's how holy she was. That's how much her spiritual powers were, which of course is not surprising as a wife of Lubavitcher Rebbe. You'd imagine that, things are comparable on some level. So it makes sense that just as the whole holiness and the spiritual greatness of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we can imagine also of his wife. But at the same time, when anybody ever went to her house, now not too many people went to her house, but the few that did would always comment and share how beautiful it was, how elegant it was. She would always dress in a very classical, elegant style. Her table was always beautiful. It was always china. It was always crystal. Everything was set out in a way of someone who really cares and is making an effort that everything should be very, very beautiful. And you could think, she's so holy, she cared. People like us, we care how our houses look. We care how we look. Spirituality of a Jew should come down to planet Earth. We are physical people, and we are supposed to serve God with the physical. And when we use it, and we use it for God, that's the point. And that's really especially a woman's ability, beauty. And actually, we're told, Kabbalistically, that when we can extract the inner godly power in the physical, that's a huge power we're releasing for God. When we eat, we're supposed to be focused. This is for God. This is me doing my mission and extracting the sparks embedded in the food. Instead of, what's more normal to us, which is it's about me, it's about my desires, it's maybe I'm eating because I'm bored, but it's almost like a waste. You see, here, the Rebbetzin as this prototype of someone who's so holy and using the physical as a godly being, as the female embodiment of a Rebbe, so to speak. People that knew her and knew the previous Rebbe, her father, like there was a chassid, Rabbi Garari, who was very close to her and to her father, and he said, she had her father's head. She was so powerful. She was so godly. She was so holy. And yet she used the physical and was able to extract from it, extract its godly potential. I remember one year, I don't remember which year it was, several years ago, by her yahrzeit, by the anniversary of her passing, I wanted to take on a good resolution, connecting to her in her honor and her merit. And what was my resolution? I said, okay, on the Sabbath, from now on, I will use my china. Until then, I would use paper plates. And I'm going to polish my candlesticks. And I really meant that as a very spiritual resolution. I wanted to connect. I wanted to try to access some of this using the physical and beauty for God energy. So I still use my china. And I don't as frequently polish my candlesticks. Every once in a while. More than I used to before, but not as well as when I first took this on, where I was very religiously doing it every other Saturday night. But it might sound like that's a funny service, like china and polishing your candlesticks. But I really felt this is what she was representing. Like taking the physical beauty and using physical beauty as a means of serving God. I think an area that is sort of challenging is in food. So I wanted to talk about that a bit because I think that's sort of a challenging area. To eat food with God in mind. with godliness in mind. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, says that when we want food, like sometimes we want that food, it's really because we want that spark of God in the food. And we release that spark of God when we eat it for Him, when we eat it with a blessing, when we eat it for Him. And the more we're conscious, we're cognizant that this is about God's service, the more powerful our eating of that food is, and the more it releases those trapped energies. So I want to hear from you how you can make eating holy, godly, more elevated. Any ways you've seen yourself change in relationship to food since you developed more and more of a relationship to God? Because we all eat, so we all have a relationship with food. And we all, one way or another, over the years have become closer to God. So how have you seen a shift in your relationship to food as you shifted in your relationship to God? Or do you see that you can eat in a way that you feel is a more sanctified experience?
Thinking about, is it correct, brucha, before we eat? That's always remembering to sing brucha and thinking, is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? Banana, it's a vegetable because it doesn't have a trunk for a tree, and things like that, I think.
So you're saying before you eat, you can't just mindlessly eat. You have to stop. You have to think about it. You have to identify it. You have to make a blessing on it. So right away, there's guards in places instead of just a sort of automatic eye, hand, mouth situation. There's actually something else going on.
Sometimes I watch some show, cooking show, and it's not a Jewish person, and they just take food and eat, and I'm like, oh, they forgot brucha.
I forgot to make the blessing.
Because and remembering the order, mizoinis is first. If you don't say brucha for bread, all this.
So you're saying the laws about the blessings automatically brings God into your eating. It makes your eating a holier experience because you have to stop and bless before you could eat.
Yes, I'm also thinking after I eat, not to forget to say bracha, and also if I eat mizonos, to say mizonos first. More careful not to get interrupted and forget to say bracha. And also I have a question, how long, for example, if I got distracted, phone call or something, how much time do I have to say bracha after?
The blessing after the meal, after you finish eating, technically it's 72 minutes.
Okay.
But really it could be longer because it's as long as you still feel full from the food. So our sages say 72 minutes as like a general assumption. But if you ate something and 2 hours later you're still really feeling full and you forgot to make the after blessing, you can make it at that point. As long as you still feel the food inside of you, you're still grateful to God for the food and you could still make the after blessing.
Okay, thank you. I hope to eat less snacks because now I need to remember.
Yeah, you think it would cause you to wait. I got to make a blessing. I don't really want this anyway. Forget it.
Yeah, but it didn't work that way for me.
There are, you would think, and I do believe that if we were really focused on eating in a holy way, it would automatically curtail the stupid eating, the mindless eating, the unhealthy eating, because like you're saying, there's like so many guards in place. Wait, I have to make a blessing. I have to think about it enough to make the blessing. That should give me enough time to think about it and say, I don't really want this. I don't really need this. This actually isn't good for me. I'm going to feel bad afterwards. It's going to make me feel gross. It's going to exhaust me. But you're saying it doesn't always happen that way. It doesn't always happen. We don't always get that connection. Anyone else has seen a shift in themselves since they started having more of a connection to God in terms of their food?
Yes, I'm trying to make bracha before too.
Nice.
Trying not to forget.
Try not to forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to put it taped up reminders where you eat, like on your computer screen or in front of your fridge, some big message, so you're not, don't forget, make a blessing. Do you find that when you make a blessing, you feel more, does it change the way you eat? Does it make you feel more conscious of the food, or that the food feels like different, like you're eating in a different way than before, or not really?
Maybe easier. Digestion is easier.
It's interesting. I had a friend who's not at all religious.
Yeah.
She had what you might have said about digestion, but she was going through really bad digestive problems. And she said to me, she said the only thing her body could tolerate was kosher. And it was very interesting. She wasn't she didn't become religious because of the experience. I don't know why not, but she didn't. But she had all these really, really bad digestive issues. And she said literally she'd look for the kosher mark on whatever the product was, and she said if it was kosher, her body could tolerate it. If it was not kosher, her body could not. It's very interesting what you're saying. It's very interesting that.
Yeah, we are buying most of the time kosher food, meat. I don't eat meat, but Walter is buying kosher one, and he's okay. He loves it.
Yeah, people say it's generally better because I remember once seeing a woman I know who's not religious at all.
Mm.
She was getting kosher. And of course, I was happy she was getting kosher meat, but I was sort of surprised. And I asked her why is she getting the kosher? And she said, nothing to do with religion. She said that she can't tolerate not kosher meat. She said the only thing her body can tolerate is either kosher or organic. And she said kosher is cheaper than organic, so she gets kosher. But she said literally, I don't know if it was the pain, the blood, something like regular. She tried. She said she wants regular meat, chicken. She cannot eat. She literally can only tolerate kosher or organic. So she went for kosher. So it's interesting. It's interesting that people, have different experiences, and some people are more sensitive and some people are less sensitive, and some people don't see any difference in kosher or not kosher. It's just they're following God's laws, and some people feel a difference in their body, a difference in, like you're saying, in their digestion. I mean, it all makes sense because whatever God commanded us to do, this is what's right for a Jewish body. So Jewish bodies need kosher, and it makes sense that a Jewish body feels better when it's eating kosher. But some of us have more sensitive bodies or are more sensitive when we pick up on it, and some of us do not. But I really wasn't going in the direction of that. It was interesting. So Bella spoke about the blessing in kosher, and Rivka and Menucha spoke about blessings. Maybe because I've been religious all my life, which means I've always made blessings on my food before and after, as far back as I can remember. And I've always, thank God, only had kosher food, just because I was born into a religious family. So I was never exposed to anything else. So for me, it doesn't feel necessarily like a godly experience when I'm eating kosher food and making a blessing before and after, because I always ate kosher food and I always made a blessing before and after. So it's nice. I think it's wonderful if you're already feeling that synergy of the physical and spiritual by the blessing. As Rivka was saying, she has to stop, she has to think, what is this? Is this a fruit? Is this something that our sages would call a vegetable? What blessing do I make on it? Bella has to remember to make a blessing. Putting your mind into it, putting your effort into it, it makes sense that these things change the experience. For me, it's honestly automatic pilot. Now, as Menucha, I also am challenged sometimes with the after blessing. I'm challenged that I have to remember to make it. And then I'm like, did I not? Did I not? So I always make sure to look inside when I say an after blessing, because I think then it'll help me remember if I do or don't, but it doesn't always help. So I don't always remember that way. What I also try to do is do it as soon as possible. Like as soon as I finish eating, make the after blessing. So I shouldn't did it not? Because if you have a question, you're not supposed to make it. If we have a question on a blessing, we don't say it because we don't want to unnecessarily take God's name. So I try to do it right away. I always look inside, and still I can forget if I said it or if I didn't say it, unfortunately. What I also try to do that helps more is I try to have some focus when I'm saying the words. I try to have focus when I'm saying the blessing before, and try to have focus when I'm saying the blessing after. Think about it a little. That obviously elevates it and helps you remember if you did it or if you didn't do it. But again, for me at least, it's not enough doing that to make it a godly experience. And unfortunately, I will say, like Menucha, you would think you're only eating kosher, you're making blessings before, you're making blessings after. For sure, you're not going to eat garbage. Like, you think it would just be automatic. You're only going to eat healthy foods, you're not going to eat unhealthy foods, you're not going to overly sugar and flour your body. Like, no, this garbage, junk process. You're ready doing everything else. It's for sure going to be like a really good controlled experience. So unfortunately, I agree with Menucha. I haven't seen much success in that either. So it's we still have our physical bodies that take over sometimes when we eat, which really is really what I'm trying to talk about here. That really we don't want that to be what's happening when we eat. Really, when we eat, we want it to be a godly experience. And that's what I was bringing in about Rebbe Chaim Mushka, because I was thinking, it's her birthday, I want to talk about her. So what am I going to say? I can tell you loads of stories. I can tell you miracle stories. I can tell you wonderful stories. I can tell you stories that show what an amazing person she was. But I wanted to think of something that we can connect to, so we can connect to eating. We can connect to eating appropriately or not appropriately. And I really feel this very unusual synergy of being such a holy, godly person and very religious and very careful in her relationship with God, and yet at the same time, she used the physical. So did she use the physical world and lose who she was as a godly person? No. It was seamless by her. If you're such a godly person, you use the physical and you want to use the physical and you're supposed to use the physical, and that physical is a vehicle for God. And I'm saying she was, a person and with, someone was saying, just showing like how there was like a young man that was like sort of working for her, so to speak, helping her. And often when she likes to take a trip to a doctor, she was in New York, her doctors are in Manhattan. There's no parking in Manhattan. So she couldn't find parking. So he would stay in the car. So, she wouldn't be double parked. He could drive around and around and around while she's in the doctor's office. So one morning, she had made other arrangements, but the arrangements fell through. So very shortly after he woke up, she asked him if he could go with her to the doctor. Now he knows she knows he just woke up very recently. So she obviously knows he didn't pray yet. Now she's the Rebbetzin, she's a very holy lady. What's he supposed to say? She said to him, did you pray? But what's he going to say? He prayed. Obviously, he hadn't prayed yet. He just woke up. So he was trying to think. He had two excuses in his head. One thing he could say, which is true, is he would pray very quickly. He thought, no, that's not going to sound very good to tell a Rebbetzin I pray very quickly. So he thought of something else, which is also true. He said he could say he prays late, because he prays quickly and he prays late. So he said, okay, if he prays late, they could go to the doctor, he could come back, and he could pray. So he said, well, to be honest, Rebbetzin, I didn't pray yet, but I pray late. It's not a problem. I'll go with you to the doctor. We'll come back from Manhattan, and then I'll pray. She said, no. I was raised in my house is the first thing you do in the morning is pray. So I don't want you to pray late because of me, so I'll go myself. So he stayed home. She went herself, and she got a ticket for double parking. So this is, physical people, but holy physical people, spiritual physical people, and all these little details like, are you praying, and are you praying too quickly, and are you praying too late? It's all part of leading a spiritual life in a very, very physical world. So to explain this idea more deeply, as I'm understanding what she was doing, and as I'm trying to share with you, for me, for you, for all of us to try to uplift ourselves a little with this concept behind this idea of eating in a godly way, using the physical in a godly way, Every single Jew, every single one of us, is God's messenger. Every one of us was sent here, down to this physical world. All of us are souls that came down to this world to work for God. As I'm saying, God's messengers, to create an elevation for God. Now, how do I give God something? I mean, he's God. I'm a human being. Yes, a human being, a soul and a body, but I'm still a very small human being. How can I give God? How does any of us give God? So when we use the physical to serve God, we give him something. Because embedded in the physical are enormous sparks of God energy, so to speak, trapped in the physical. And when a Jew uses that physical to serve God, he releases that God energy and allows it to fly up, allows it to be elevated, allows it to go back to God. So ideally, when we eat, because we eat all the time, so eating is a constant battle between us and the physical world. When we eat, we really want to be focused. We want to have this intellect, this overlay of spirituality. Yes, the food is kosher. Yes, we made a blessing before. Yes, we're making a blessing after. But that's not even enough. We want to be focused to extract and release the sparks. Like the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, said, as I mentioned earlier, when we eat, we don't want to eat for the physical, though we do want to eat for the physical. But when we want the physical, we should recognize our soul wants the godly energy within the physical. That's why I want the physical. No, I want the physical. It looks good. It smells good. It tastes good. I took one bite. I want a second bite. I took a second bite. I want a fifth bite. No, there's godly energy within it. The more physical, the more God energy. Really? Yes. The more physical, the more God energy. And unfortunately, as humans, we mess this up completely. Like, it's sad to say that, but we mess this up completely because people dedicate their lives to bread. If bread means food or if bread means money, we dedicate our lives to both. We dedicate our lives to earning money for food, for the essentials of life, for the non-essentials of life, for the pleasures of life, for the power of life, for the security and safety of having it in our bank account and watching the stock market go up and down and making ourselves crazy that way. People dedicate their lives to bread. Yet it's exactly the opposite. We're here to create God's energy. We're here to express God's unity in this world. This is a world that seemingly is very far from God, very separate from God. And people can even experience amazing miracles and not even make the connection. You know, literally last night, sometimes at night, I do a lot of work, but it's sort of like, it doesn't require much of my brain space, but it takes a lot of time. So sometimes I try to put on something like on YouTube that I can listen to, sort of entertain me as I'm working. But I'm very careful with what I let myself watch because most of it is just garbage and not good for any of us. So one of the things I let myself listen to is like people sharing their experiences from the Holocaust. I think as much as you can tolerate it, it's a good thing to listen to and remember. Not that I'm promoting it. I know some people can't handle it, and I respect that completely. And sometimes I can't handle it. But what struck me and was so disturbing is, like anyone that survives a Holocaust, they had clear miracles. In your face, cannot deny miracles. And they didn't even connect the dots. Like one such miracle, they were in the Krakow ghetto. The chief Nazi there was called the Butcher of Krakow. He's a horrible person. And he literally just had pleasure in shooting and killing, especially children, but Jews in general. He went into they're in the ghetto, and he and all the soldiers go into their apartment building. They go from the top floor, and they go, let's say, I don't know how many apartments are on each floor. They go, the soldiers bash in the doors, and then this Butcher of Krakow has the pleasure of shooting every single person, and then go to the next apartment. I mean, there's no way to escape. There's soldiers outside. There's nowhere to go. They're literally stuck in their apartments. And he goes, soldiers smash the doors. He's not going to get his hands dirty smashing the doors, but he gets himself drenched with blood. He loves that, literally shooting every single person in the apartment. He does all the apartments on the top floor, all the apartments on the next floor, all the apartments on the next floor. He's on the first floor. He's at their apartment. He's done every other apartment in the building. This is the last apartment. He comes into their apartment. The soldiers smash it in. They're just there. They've nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. They heard all the people above them screaming, and their friends, their family, and they knew it was coming. There's no other choice. Nowhere to run to. He takes out his gun, and the gun was empty of bullets, and okay, no problem. He takes out the magazine, he puts the bullets in, and he literally lifts it up to shoot them. And some German soldier ran in and said something to him. And he turned, like you can almost see, he so much wanted just to kill them, but he just, for whatever reason, had to leave, and he left. Every single person in that building was shot by him personally, except this family. And they retell the story. There's a number of voices saying it. All the children are, of course, now are senior adults. And one of them used the word God. Not one of them connected to God. It was so painful to me to hear that. And I mean, others, throughout all their stories, because there's no way anybody survived the Holocaust without many, many, many miracles. So why am I saying this? Not to speak bad about someone, obviously, whatever they went through, their training, their childhood, their experiences, I'm not judging them, but to me it's just such an extreme example that we're here for a mission, and we could be so confused. We could be so not connected to our mission. We just can dedicate our lives to something completely different. And unfortunately for many people, they dedicate their lives to bread. They dedicate their lives to money. They dedicate their lives to food. They dedicate their lives to all the physical pleasures that they want. And we're here to create God's energy. We're here to create God's unity. In this world, which seemingly is so separate from God, we're here to express God's oneness. So it's such a pity when anyway we're busy with a lot of physicality, and most of our lives we're busy with a lot of physical stuff. We have to deal with a lot of food and money and work and cooking and cleaning and shopping and bills and appointments and dealing with all the problems. And I mean, I don't have to tell you, we all do this. This is our lives. It's like we're dealing with physical anyway. We're eating anyway. We should try to take advantage of it to fulfill our real purpose in life. Like, people could think, oh, if I want to fulfill my purpose in life, I have to create a time where I'm not doing this physical stuff, and I should pray, meditate, say Psalms, study Torah, all of which is good and all of which is great things to do. But the point is, and when you live your physical life, and you're eating, and you're working, and you're driving, and you're dealing with all the details of life, therein is also our purpose. There is also a very powerful way to connect to God, because there's tremendous God energy trapped in the physical. And when a Jew uses that energy and remembers God and thinks of God as they're doing that physical activity, they're releasing that energy. So again, I can't think of anything more physical than food. I'm sure there are other things equally physical for sure. But food's a really obvious example, and we eat all day long, and we struggle with eating, and we want to eat right, and we want to eat healthy, and we don't want to overeat it. We don't want to eat foods that junk up our body and make us not healthy. So it's something probably every one of us struggles with on some level, unless you're someone that has complete control over your food and you don't struggle with it. And that's amazing. But for most of us, we have some level of struggle with food. And it'd be such an amazing thing when we're taking this item that anyway we struggle with, and instead of being below it and struggling with it, and do I control it or does it control me, which is such a sad concept to think. Does the physical control me or do I control it? Am I the master or am I the slave? But imagine going on such a higher level of staying focused and staying above by saying, it's not just I'm the master. I'm representing God. I'm here for a mission. And I'd like to eat conscious of my mission. I'd like to live conscious of my mission. Of course, live is a broad word, so it takes a lot of seconds of your day. But if we're just starting with eating, hopefully those are discrete moments in time. They would be like, oh wait, now I'm eating. Now I want to turn on my hat of I'm a Jew, God's emissary in this world. I have a mission. And how do I make a synergy like Rebbe Chaim Mushka did? That she was so holy and so godly and so spiritual and so focused on God, and set such a beautiful table with her china, with her crystal, with her elegant suits, using the beauty of this world as a means not of when she wasn't focused on God, but as a means of expressing God in this world. So any thoughts now that I gave a more complete story of what I'm trying to express and where I'm coming from and how this connects to the Rebbetzin and how this connects to us? Any thoughts on how to stay focused, how we could potentially stay focused and stay above and not be under food, not be controlled by food, but rather we are the masters, we are God's representatives. We have the ability not just to not be under, but to literally be the master, that we're extracting the energy from the food.
I have a question. Do you know their menu, Rebbe and Rebbitzin? I'm just curious what they were eating like every day for breakfast, lunch, dinner.
I don't. I think they ate very simple foods. I think they ate not that much. The Rebbe for sure ate not that much. It was known before he was Rebbe that he very often would fast for days and days and days, which officially he wasn't supposed to be doing. As I'm saying, you're supposed to use the physical to serve God, but there's also the idea of abstaining from the physical. So I even when, of course, he wasn't fasting, in general, the Rebbe ate very little. There were many days when the Rebbe would go to the Oihel, to the resting place of his predecessor, the previous Rebbe, and he wouldn't eat anything then until after he came back, which could be, he would drink water, but he wouldn't eat anything till he came back, which could be very, very late at night some days. So the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, as far as I understand, both ate very little. It is said about the Rebbe, I don't know why, but I'm sure there's a reason, that the Rebbe would over excessively salt his food. He would put tremendous amount of salt in a way that didn't make sense. Like it didn't make it taste good. You know what I mean? Like there was something he was doing by putting too much salt on the food. And somebody even once asked the Rebbe, why does the Rebbe put so much salt? And I don't know, the Rebbe said something like, he likes it. But it did, even people, followers of the Rebbe, try to imitate the Rebbe, but nobody put that much salt on their food. It made it almost inedible. So I don't know. You could speculate. Was he trying to take away the taste? Was he this? Was he that? I don't know. So I don't know. But I do know that's known about the Rebbe. But in general, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin ate lightly and little. In general, they both of them, but for sure the Rebbe. But actually both. But any thoughts on this? Now, again, you could say, oh, maybe this is an answer. Maybe if we eat little, we can be more focused when we're eating and more appreciative that this has God's energy, and that's why we should be eating it. I actually, I prepared this today, so I was thinking today before I was eating, all right, I want to eat focused on that. I want to release God's energy. So what happened was I didn't put a lot of stupid nothing in my mouth because it was too much effort. And it was hard to convince yourself if you're just eating some garbage you shouldn't eat. Well, I'm eating this to extract the godliness. It was just easier not to eat it. But I don't know if that's going to be a long-term solution. But it was definitely the sense of no, it's a real focus. It's not simple to look at food for what it really is. A state of energy that's hugely powerful. It makes sense food is hugely powerful. Look how it controls people. Look how food controls people. It's so crazy to think we're controlled by food. But so many people are, more or less. And maybe the reason there's such control because there's such power. There's such God power. God power in the physical. So imagine being able to rise above that. To not to be enslaved by that power, but to be able to extract that power and give that power to God. Maybe it's too much to think every time you eat you can do that, but maybe once a day. I have a friend who, she told me, spiritual friend of mine, that she tries her first, I don't know if it's coffee, let's say coffee or tea, whatever she drinks, hot water, I don't know what she drinks in the morning, I don't remember, but her first drink of the morning, first call it coffee of the morning, she makes the blessing. Of course, it's a blessing, But she tries to really, really focus on the meaning of that blessing before that first food, that first drink she's putting in her mouth, and really focus. The blessing is Shakol Nihya Bidvaro, that everything is made by the word of God. And she tries to really think about that and really look at that coffee and think this is coming to existence because God is willing it. This exists now, this food is in front of me because God is willing it to be. And then she drinks the coffee or whatever her drink is in the morning. And it's really a beautiful thought. And she doesn't do it all day long. But that first drink, she dedicates that drink to God. So maybe we can't do it every time we eat, but there could be some time of eating where we could really, or maybe on Shabbos when we're eating, to really like try to focus that I don't want this food to control me. It's not just I want to be in control. It's not an ego thing. It's I'm supposed to be in control. We're here on a mission. We're here to release this God energy trapped in the physical. We're here to elevate to God. And so sad to think instead of me mastering and elevating and releasing the energy, I'm getting stuck by it. It's such a different, it's such a, who's in control? What's in control? But it's hard for us because we're very physical and food calls our name a lot. So it sounds funny to say it's a challenge. You know, it's funny. It's like I think sometimes when we have the complete revelation of Mashiach and the children then will learn certain things in school and it will sound so strange to them. I can imagine children learning in school about the idea of transgression. Someone's sinning, so against God's will. I used to think my children, but now my children are older, but maybe my grandchildren, come to me and say, did you ever know anyone that ever sinned? What am I supposed to say? Yeah, me? Or no, I'm not supposed to lie. But it will sound so strange. What? You mean you knew God? You knew his will? You knew he was watching? You knew he rewards and punishes? And you went against him? Like, that sounds strange. Why would you be so strange? It is strange, but we live in a world and we're, whatever. So similarly, could you imagine them learning in school that in the olden days, food ruled people and people suffered and spent billions of dollars, to try to figure out how to eat in a healthy way, that they had healthy bodies and weren't, harming themselves with the food they ate. And it would sound so strange. You know what you're supposed to eat? It was accessible to you. So what happened? So this is how we live, but like really, could we escape the trap? Could we live in a different way?
What about conversation during a meal with family? Should be, how is it looked upon? Is it good or not so good?
It depends what the conversation is. In other words, we're told we're not supposed to talk when we are eating, because that could be considered dangerous. But if it's like a family meal, it's a beautiful time to talk. As long as you're not chewing at the same time, it's a beautiful time to talk and to connect. And yeah, of course we would ideally want it to be a higher level, but honestly, sometimes there's a value in connections. There's a value in relationship. And if we can, and sometimes people are saying things that aren't on such a high level, but we know by listening and by paying attention and by asking questions, we're giving the person a positive feeling and they're feeling better about themselves and we're showing interest in what they're interested in. That's also a very beautiful thing to do. And mealtime is a wonderful time to connect to people. So definitely families and friends around a meal can, it's good. That's a great way to use food as a tool of connectivity between people. I think that's a very positive use of it. Any other thoughts on this? Maybe I'm aiming high. I am aiming high, but I figured we all deal with this. This is our life. So wouldn't it be nice to live high and aspire for something and figure out how to make that something translate into the practical details of our life? God doesn't want us to abstain. God wants us to use his world. God gave us a beautiful world. He could have done it differently. He could have made us like snakes, that everything tastes like dust. He could have made our bodies that they don't need food, or made our bodies that the only thing we could digest is some tasteless, or monochromatic, or exactly one thing. No. God gave us a beautiful world. God gave us a world full of delicious foods, kosher. We live in Chicago. We have so much food, or in California or in New Jersey, there's so much kosher food that's delicious and plentiful. Thank God. Our challenge should be how to eat properly. Our ancestors' challenge was how to get food. Was there any food to get? Forget about delicious and plentiful. Was there food? Thank God our challenge is how to eat it properly. So God gave us a beautiful world, and he wants us to have that beauty. And he wants us not to forget him within that beauty, but to use that beauty as an expression of him in this world. Same thing with, like I said, the Rebbetzin dressed beautifully. It's not like, oh, she's supposedly holy. Why is she wearing nail polish? Why does she have a beautiful suit on? Why should she look beautiful? What do you mean? God wants us to look beautiful. Look beautiful and bring him in. You represent him. You're a Jewish woman. You represent God. You should look beautiful. God gave us the ability to look beautiful. Bring him into it. Don't not, because, if I'm a person who have a relationship with God, what do I care about my appearance? No. You have a relationship with God, and you want to have a beautiful experience because you represent God in this world. So it's a whole perspective. It's a deep perspective. It's not a cop-out. It's a very deep perspective. God gave us a beautiful world with many permissible beauties in it. And he wants us to use all those permissible beauties. He wants us to enjoy his world and bring him into the picture. Not enjoy his world and forget about him. Not don't enjoy his world, but enjoy his world with him as part of it. Thoughts? If anyone comes up with any great ideas or has any great success stories, I would love to hear them. I would love to be inspired by them. I'm going to try myself as well to be focused when I'm eating. There's a reason I'm eating. God gave me a lot of great, delicious food. There's some sparks of God that I'm supposed to be releasing, and that should be part of my journey as well.